Good afternoon. Welcome to the tea table. I am so happy you have joined me today. And we are going to go to the most interesting lands and countries and learn new things about our world. Well, I am dressed in a little bit of a costume that is somewhat created and improvised, but before we get started, I want, if you haven't gotten your tea yet, please pause and get your tea, and I will be waiting for you. Yes. Well, I have a lovely little tea set today for our international tea talk. And what it is, this is my tea pot and cups. I put on a little can, it's called Akbar, but inside I have in this can, it's Akbar tea, is tea that my son brought me or sent me years ago from the Russian shop in California. And it's called Impra Black Currant Black Tea. And he sent me a huge box, actually 2 boxes, and another Russian tea. And I put it in this little, part of it in this little tin. And on the actual tea, the Russian tea, it says Sri Lanka, because we know that even though we have these British teas, the Irish teas, the German teas, the Eastern European and the Russian teas, they don't grow tea. They don't have a warm enough climate. So they import it. And most of it comes from Kenya and from India, from Africa, South America. Well, I want to show you, I wish my camera was a little bit bigger so that I could just have this at all times, but I have a teacup for you and a teacup for me. Let me put this down. And these are actually very, very unique. They are a small, probably a Demitasse coffee cup. And they are part of the St. Petersburg collection of china that goes back to the time of Catherine the Great. And it is the one I did a whole Russian tea talk early on and talked about how her starting of this china, so amazing, and it was exported all over the world, it still is, and through all their suffering, their revolution, the communist era, the 100 years when Russia was closed, the factory still kept going. It's one thing that kept going. Now this pot is similar, but I think it's from an Eastern European country, maybe one of the Eastern Bloc countries. It has a number on the bottom, but it does not have a label, but it's not exactly the St. Petersburg, but very close. And then this is just a very pretty pot with blue and gold. And it's so interesting how all of these countries use the cobalt blue and the gold. So I chose a special napkin and I put it in a royal gold napkin ring. And this napkin has on it a little insignia that could look very royal. It could be, I think anyone could claim it. Isn't it nice? And it sits right on the tea cart. And so this is your tea. And I'm going to give you a splash of milk because that's what I like, and I hope you like it. Now that is your tea. I'm going to put that down. And then I will take my tea and let's try it. Oh, it smells so good. Black currant. Oh my goodness. It actually tastes like the British. The British use a lot of black currant jam, black currant tea. So, but this tea says Sri Lanka on it, even though it was sold at the Russian shop. It must be what the Russians like with their big samovars. Well, we are not exactly going to Russia today, but I'm going to show you now with the 1 cup how my little tea tray looks. Isn't that beautiful? And we'll put the napkin so you can see, whoops, the royal gold and blue. We're picking up blue and gold all around. And I like the little pot. I like blue and gold when it's combined with a little flower, so I used that. And then I saw on my front porch, this begonia is going wild. I have a shady front porch and it loves my front porch. Isn't that gorgeous? So I brought that along for the tea table today. I wish you could see it. Maybe I'll pull this a little closer and you can kind of see it. So what I'm wearing is a combination, but to start, I'm wearing a world. This is a gold globe, and on it are the continents. It says America, North America, South America, Eurasia, Asia, Antarctica, Australia, and Africa. It has Africa. It's all printed in this brass, and it is, I can't get it any further to show you, but it's a globe just like what you would have in school, but brass. Now, I'm a little gaudy today, but I'm dressing up to, it all started with my headpiece. And you all know Elizabeth. She's a friend to the Tea Talk, and she's been on the Tea Talk. She's the young girl that is a professor, and she wears her hat on my Tea Talk. Well, she recently went to Europe with her classmates and took them along on a tour of Vienna and Hungary and Prague. Well, when she was in Hungary, she went to the market and she brought me these. This is a hat, a headpiece, and this is a headband. I combined them together and it ties behind with a little red tie. It's quite clever. And it's part of the Hungarian national costume. Well, in Eastern Europe, all these costumes kind of roll together. Even the Norwegian costumes have similarities, and the Swedish costumes, and then the Finnish costumes, and you go down to the Baltic states and Ukrainian costumes, and they have their dances and their singing and their national anthem, and they all know their country. They love their country. They all love freedom. That's the number one characteristic all these countries have in common. They treasure their freedom because they know what it is to lose their freedom. During World War I and World War II, they were first under, many of them lost their crowns in World War I, and then they were assimilated into the Soviet Union. They were under Stalin. And then during the war, many of them taken over by Hitler, and they were under the Nazis. So they know what it is to suffer totalitarian governments. And they continue their freedom song. I always say, freedom, there's a song of freedom, and it's sung from the human heart, and it connects to the next human heart. And I believe it connects to God, because God is the one. Remember Thomas Jefferson? That we are endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights. That goes right back to our Declaration of Independence, but it's based on a higher law. It's based on the law of God. That God created all men equal. And God, when He looks at us, He looks at our hearts. We look at each other outwardly, and man looks on the outward appearance, but it says in the Bible, God looks on the heart. So when He sees us, I've heard the old saying, the ground is level at the cross. It doesn't matter if you're a king, a pauper, a prince, a professor, a ditch digger, a farmer, an engineer, a musician, an artist. In God's eyes, we are all the same. He doesn't look at that outward position as making you better than others. He looks at the motive and intent of the heart. None of us can live perfect lives, but God looks at our motives. If we can keep our motives right, that's what the Sermon on the Mount was all about. Not hating your brother. That's a motive. Not envying, not looking at others and wanting what they have. That's covetousness. Well, I just have to pour a little more tea. I love the way the tea looks outside. This is a nice pot. It's a perfect size for me. Well, I started today with a completely different thought of a tea talk. And then when I found this headdress, I thought I've got to match it. So I have a little gold, and this is gold coin necklace. And brass, of course. But it has on it coins that are ancient, but they could be from any country. They don't have a country name. And I love this shawl. I love these colors. This deep turquoise with this kind of an orange red. Isn't it wonderful? And those are the colors you get in these European costumes. You get these deep, rich, and I have a bumblebee here, and he has to go. Bee, you have to go now. You can't come to the tea talk. He sees the treat. Well, let me show you the treat. The treat is actually, it's a little European treat, and it's a biscotti from Italy. This is made in Italy. But my grandmother from Norway made a very similar cookie they called skorpa. And the Vikings probably went down to Italy and got the idea. The difference is the biscotti has more eggs. The skorpa has more butter. It has egg. They all have eggs and butter, but it's very Norwegian with almond buttery. And I put some of the cardamom in mine. This is this has some anise and almonds. It's very nice, kind of a sponge made in Italy. Everything on my table is European. Well, my friend Elizabeth, she's been texting me because then she came back from that trip and went on a trip with her family, her children and her husband. And they went to Denmark, Sweden, where she has relatives, and they stayed at a 500-year farm. And then they went to Estonia. And that's the country I want to talk about today. And then they crossed the water by ferry to Finland and flew home. But if Russia had not been at war right now, I have another friend who's done this exact trip, but they went to St. Petersburg and saw the beautiful Catherine the Great castle and palace and all of that. But you can't go to Russia right now, sadly, because of this terrible war. Well, when she was texting me. I learned a lot about Denmark. I've been to Denmark, but never really to Denmark. I've only flown in, flown out. And she went to the Hans Christian Andersen house, and Denmark is beautiful. It's so clean, of course. And then, it's the gateway. I'm actually Norwegian, but Norway was under Denmark until 100 years ago when they got their independence. And the Danish crown was very strong. The Danish king in the 1800s was called the grandfather of Europe because all of his grandchildren, with Queen Victoria's grandchildren, were sitting on all the thrones of Europe. Now that's before World War I. World War I took out so many of those kingdoms, which I think is so sad. Austria lost its king and queen and empress. They lost the whole They were the Hungarian Austrian Empire. And then Hungary also has a crown because they have a royal house also. And America actually, I believe it was in World War I or World War II, they took the crown here to protect it, and now they've given it back. Then, of course, you had the Germans. They lost their royal house. France had lost their royal house 100 years and 150, 200 years ago with the French Revolution. So you had the Danish house when Norway got its independence, and then it established its own royal house. Well, it had a royal house that it was under Denmark. Then Denmark got smaller, and Norway really took its place in history and has a beautiful royal house, and Sweden has a royal house. Well, when you go along the water, I wish I had a map. You cross from England to Denmark, and you go up to Norway, and then Sweden, and then Finland. But Elizabeth went on boat from Sweden to Estonia, and Estonia is on the Baltic Sea, and it's, of course, east of Germany, and it's right there sitting next to Russia, right next to Russia on the map. And then it's across the water from Finland. So it borders Russia. So these people, they value their freedom, and they have had to fight for their freedom and pay a price for their freedom. Well, I'm just so fascinated because, and that's why I'm using this China, because I feel like the Estonian China would be very similar. I don't have anything from Estonia, but they would use this, probably something like this Russian China. I know I have some Romanian China, and it's the cobalt blue and gold. So cobalt blue and gold is just everywhere, in every country. I think this tea would be very, very close to what they would have. But I want to share something with you. The Estonians have the most phenomenal history. They are musicians and singers. They are known for their harmonies and their singing. And when the Soviet Union was so threatening to them, they knew that they couldn't pick up arms. That wouldn't do anything. That wasn't going to. They all gathered at the city square, and I think it was 300,000 people strong, and they sang their national anthem. And they obtained their freedom. Isn't that beautiful? And I teach church history, and one of my themes that I have used throughout is the song goes on. Because from generation to generation, the song of freedom in Christ. Well, this song is going on. And I hope you won't mind, but I found it online. The most beautiful, beautiful rendition of their national anthem, and one of their great composers and pianists introduces it. And I'm just going to share it with you. Okay, maybe I turned it down instead of up. Did something.
The Song Festival has been a beautiful way to express, please, dear Lord, help us to keep our country and our language. Help us to keep our country and our language.
Song celebration tradition is something what is in our history, and I think it is like in people's genealogy. And when we had singing revolution, Estonians, they just gathered to song celebration ground and sang. It was that declaration. And I remember the feeling that we have 80,000 people here. You can't arrest and you can't kill all of them. And I think that it made Estonian people feel that music can make difference. And that's why we continue with this tradition.
In Estonia, we love to say that we sang us free. In the way, it's truth in it because of the song celebration tradition. We survived as a nation through those Soviet years. That made us to believe that, yes, we are still here, we still speak in Estonia, we still sing in Estonia, and even we have new composers who are making wonderful and uncensored music of love to country, love to each other.
I've lived my whole life in a free country. I really can't imagine what it's like to be in, for example, Soviet Russia, which was the previous reign here. But I appreciate the fact that we're a free nation, and I think that freedom is very fragile. We should cherish this, and we cherish our freedom and our culture with the Song and Dance Festival.
We are singing ourselves free, showing what we are.
It's a taste. I'm sorry, it's so heavy I can hardly hold it straight, but my iPad, but you can look it up. Estonian Song of Freedom online, and there are more people talking and singing and dancing in their beautiful costumes. And I'll tell you what comes to me. You know, music is the heart of the soul, and music is what we need. We need music in our lives, and we need to sing together. But more than that, we need to appreciate our freedom. And anyone that doesn't love their country, there's something sad about that. Our country, each nationality, I teach African Kenyans at a biblical seminary, and I have graduate students that are just, I have a bishop as a graduate student. They love their country. They love Kenya. One of my students, Simon, he said, when we fly home and we are over, I see the Nile, I see Nairobi, my heart starts beating. I love my country. Whoa, that's so beautiful. That's so normal. That's so healthy. That's so important. None of us had a choice in the country we were born in. We're born into a family that God chooses and into the country where God chooses. So that is the country we love and honor and devote ourselves to. You know, even people under communism in terrible situations where there was no freedom, in a country like Russia or in a country like China, the people still love their country. They love their country so much, they want it to be free. And it makes me feel like we need to be singing, and maybe that's an answer. I love what they said. She said 80,000 people in the square. And I read a statistic, at one point they had 300,000 come, and no one can shoot that many people, and no one could stop them. And you know, even the people that you may think are against you, when they hear the music, they have a heart, and that heart they have will respond to that truth and that freedom. I have friends that have performed in Russia, and my friend Helen, she and her daughter went on many tours of the Soviet Union before the wall came down. And she said the interesting thing is, she would play her violin and her daughter accompanied her. She said the Russian men would sit there weeping. Now, it's interesting, the women were not weeping. Maybe the women are so strong, they had to work so hard, they're just taking it in. But the men, she said the Russian men, these big, hardy, strong Russian men would just weep when they heard the violin playing. It touched their heart. And we need to touch one another's hearts. We need to let God touch our hearts, so we don't become hard. We want to stay tender. We want to stay kind and merciful. And all of you, most of you, I have some Europeans that are listening. Austria is a beautiful country. England's a beautiful country. I have Africans that listen. I have someone in South America, someone in Hawaii. But most of you have been born and bred in America. We have so much to be grateful for. And we need to pass this baton to the young people. We need to pass the song of freedom. You know, I read years ago the man who wrote Francis Key Scott, when he wrote that great, beautiful song that national anthem. He said, others can build the cities, others can plant the fields, others can heal the sick. He said, all I can do is write my country's songs, and I want to do my duty to God and my fellow countrymen. And look at the beautiful song he wrote. Many of you could write a poem, and it could become a song. Many songs are not, the melody is not written by the lyricist. Often the lyrics are separate. I think we need to just breathe in. When I heard that beautiful Estonian choir, those beautiful young people dancing and singing, the older people with them, all together, the little children, all ages together, singing in perfect harmony. And the words are so beautiful. I can't pull them up, but it's about my fatherland, I love you. And even through the tears, there's some very deep, beautiful words to that song. I would encourage you to go online and listen to it. And if you need the link, ask me, and I'll happily send you the link. But I think you can just Google it. Well, here's my little world. And you know what? The world is little now because of the flying and the communication and the cell phones and the TV and the communication. Yes, and all of the social media. We live in a small world, but the world is still big. And every country in this world is very special. And I love to honor every country. God, it says in the Bible, God is the God of the nations, plural. God is the one who created the nations and the variety and the costumes. Think of it, the color. Each country has a different flag. I love to look. Sometimes on my phone I see all the flags. I love to look at all the flags. They're so beautiful. So beautiful. And they all mean something deep to the people that have chosen those symbols on the flags. Yes. Well, I have to go now, but if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and push the notification bell. And if you like it, push the like and the share button. Please share with others. I want this little tea talk to bring you joy, strength, and comfort and inspiration to do something beautiful for someone else. Yes. Well, thank you so much. And think about tea, the beautiful begonia that grows in the shade. Even if we have shade, there's beautiful flowers. The lily grows in the valley. Yes, the edelweiss up on the mountain. But the beautiful begonia, it has to have a lot of shade. Isn't that interesting? So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's been a special time. Enjoy tea every day with your friends and family. And I will look forward to seeing you next time.